My next speaker today is Boby Jose, and he is a public speaker. He's a published author, and things like that. So he's going to talk to us today about um, about the leadership dilemma when coming to test automation. All right. So without so here we go. Hi Bobby, and how are you?
Hi, Larry. I'm fine. Thank you. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. We can hear you
Oh,
fine.
thank you, Larry. Thank you for for a nice introduction.
The pleasure is mine. So, I can say, so without further ado, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity. And um, before I start going through the leadership dilemma, I will give a brief introduction about myself and the reason which I thought it would be really useful this presentation to everyone. So I have over 2 decades of experience in software testing, test management, um, leading various projects in kind of end-to-end spectrum of testing. So I'm a published author. My book on test automation, mainly the leadership side, A Manager's Guide, was published by British Computer Society in a year back. To talk about myself, or more about myself, I was the head of the second largest healthcare application in the world. It was NHS Choices. Right now, it is known as NHS.UK. And the people in UK or Europe, they are probably more familiar with that site. Um, During that time, I got the opportunity to test the world's largest SharePoint implementation. It was a massive implementation. Then I was a lead tester for the world's second busiest airport, or the Europe's busiest airport. And then I manage uh, testing, mainly the head of testing of the largest service desk in the world, head of testing for um, many sites and solutions. I also manage UAT for a Swiss agro company, and which we covered user acceptance testing across more than 100 countries. So, and also I started my testing career as a test engineer. I started with an offshoring company where the client bases are mainly in Middle East, US, and Asia Pacific. Then I moved to a product-based company, and I got opportunity to test some of the complex product in biometrics and bioinformatics and material science. That was almost 20 years back. 20 years back, we tested products like three-dimensional and so and so. So if you have been in this industry for many years, you might remember um, in 20 years back, it was mainly use IBM IntelliStation to test complex solutions or three-dimensional, because and the monitor was more or like probably a size of a washing machine these days. On top of that, I'm a MBCS, a member of British Computer Society. I'm an advanced test manager by ISTQB. I'm certified in Scrum Master, Product Owner, and also I'm certified in Prince, Foundation and Practitioner. More than that, I believe my experience is across multiple domains. I have seen a project from the contract or pre-contract, then the discovery, initiation, implementation, business as usual, run phase, and decommission. So I have seen project end to end from a concept to decommission. I have also tested so both product and service based testing. So I have extensive experience in product testing and also consulting areas. So and various methodologies like waterfall, agile, DevOps, CI/CD, and all different kind of methodologies. So what I'm trying to emphasize here, um, during my two decades of testing experience, I have seen wide variety of solutions, and that is a key reason which I wrote a book on test automation, because um, very rarely we come across with people, they have wider experience in different solutions or different methodologies or different industries. Most of the cases people have very limited knowledge, and then they use that limited knowledge to give a definition for test automation, and most of the cases the end result is not always as we thought or as we would like to see. So I'm going to cover 5 leadership dilemmas in testing, mainly test automation. Um, when everyone is a leader, right? When it comes to a junior test automation analyst to a CEO's level, they have different challenges when it comes to taking decisions, and these challenges are different for different business model. When it comes to product testing, they face a different challenge compared to a consulting or service integration, and subject to all sort of contracts. So there are different kind of challenges, and in this session mainly I will go through some of those challenges, some of the interesting aspects about test automation, and and again you need to consider this is subject to different industries and solutions. You all heard about Rex Black, right? The founder of ISTQB, and also he wrote many books about testing and test automation. His books on ISTQB Advanced Test Management is quite famous. So he made this statement, I think, in last year or year before, in his book on artificial intelligence and machine learning testing, published by British Computer Society. It's a quite interesting one. Test automation in long run is less likely to succeed than an open heart surgery. So there is a study done by Khan in 2000, and his main finding is, and it is based on, Rex Black made the statement based on that studies. So think about people above 80 years old, and they go through a heart surgery, or people above 70 years go through a heart surgery. The studies prove that 80% of those people, they survive after 5 years of that heart surgery. Now compare this to test automation. If you don't change the technology, if you don't change the tools, how many test automation can survive after 5 years without major changes? And the studies shows it is less than 50%. So it's an interesting statement, probably a controversial statement, but test automation is sometimes this success of test automation is sometimes it's less than heart surgery, open heart surgery. What's the main reason? Because some reasons are, we sometimes we go with the trend. We read a lot of articles, we hear from people about the success stories, and we just take that and try to implement in a project or product, and then without really seeing what's the purpose of test automation or what's the objectives. So a success versus failures, we all have, probably many of you have seen a lot of failures in test automation, or not the success we thought we failed to achieve. So automation goal, that is the first leadership dilemma. What is the purpose of test automation? What's the objective? Or why do we need test automation? So, so when it comes to the goal of test automation, we should not, we must address this question: what is our goal? What's the purpose? And what's the objective of test automation? So, a couple of things. Understanding the objectives. In some cases, objective is to regression testing. We have multiple releases, frequent releases. We need a solid automation package to do regression testing. Or DevOps, CI/CD, Agile methodology. The automation is heart of those methodologies. So that is one reason. But when it comes to a leadership or a leader, they may have probably a different priorities or objectives or goals from test automation. So it is always good to understand or try to understand what's the leadership priorities or objectives or goals for test automation, and address in any projects. Don't go with the flow. Don't pick up any a tool which the tool is already in your organization, or don't pick up any tool which is just free. You really see what is the purpose of the goal of test automation, and pick up the right methodologies, right tool. And sometimes we don't need any automation also, then you need to take that decision. So and again, what level of automation is required? Do we need a, a really good automation framework, or what kind of scripting is required, what kind of tools is required, or some cases, we may just need a record and playback that is sufficient for automation. So we need to really understand the goal, objective, purpose, then uh, look around for the tool, and see what we are going to achieve during that automation. And also, or always try to see how to measure the success of automation. What's the cost benefit analysis? There are plenty of formulas available, but what, as a leaders, what we really need to look into, the aspect is it really required, or what's the real objective and benefit of this automation? Market forces, this is, so I will show you a list of companies. So these companies, right, the top three companies, or many more of those companies, we all know they ran out of business. And reasons were, sometimes it's quite interesting. It is market forces. Probably a decade back or 2 decades back, we use IT or test automation to enable business. So when it comes to IT, it's always people consider it is a business support function, like HR or a similar function. So it's a business enabled function. But over a period of time, probably last 10 years, it's completely changed and changed to IT as a main business. So if you see many of these retail companies, or many of these supply chain companies, it is more than their core business. It is IT is their main business. And if they fail to bring changes at the right time, they struggle to survive. Debenhams is a good example in UK. At one point of time, they were the market leaders, but they couldn't bring a e-commerce system on time, and that was one of the main reasons Debenhams lost their market, lost the customers, and forced to close down. And the other companies like Amazon, Airbnb, Deliveroo, we know or Uber, it is mainly the IT is a business, and they use a service to and IT to utilize use the potential of probably a retail or a taxi service. So that is the market forces, and where exactly the test automation and or leaders role in those kind of scenarios. Most of the cases, the industry or business, they cannot wait for months or years for the new solutions. They expect the new solution to be on the market as soon as possible. So it's a quick to market is one of the key success factors for many of this business. First in the market, that is another reason. So many companies, they want to be first in the market, or they would like to be very quick in the market. And IT technologies, we know these days, that enable the business. That's one reason whenever there is a new technologies, companies are very keen to understand that technology, and they come up with a product or a service, and then they ask the implementation team or delivery team to deliver this as soon as possible, and then the pressure on the testing. Most of the cases, we don't get months or weeks to complete our testing and deliver the solution. So as most of you know, that many companies, that's the reason they moved from that shift right, that CI/CD approach, or DevOps approach, test on production, rather than test rather than following a waterfall approach. So that is probably one of the key challenges for many of the leaders when it comes to test automation. And it is part of that purpose. What exactly we need? What's the objective for testing? Is it something really enable the product development, or is it really help them to be quick in the market rather than taking ages to complete testing? Building a team. This is one of the key aspects or dilemma for the test manager or any leaders or anyone who is holding a leadership position in testing. It is always difficult to uh, build a team, and because there are various factors, right? Hiring the right skills, or if you have people in the organization, upskill them, and then there are new technologies, and the people needs to understand what is these technologies, and also it is most of the case it is difficult to get the right kind of people or skills from the market. And once we hire, once we start to deliver, retaining them is also a key factor. So building and a successful testing team or test automation team, or leading a successful test automation team, that is another key dilemma for many leaders in testing and IT. And also when it comes to framework, get the right people to develop the framework or understand the framework. Certification, there are plenty of certification available, but how to help team to get some of the certification, get the training, and deliver or take the certifications. Now, the other side is the interview techniques. Um, so how to hire a right person within probably a short span of time. You may get probably 30 minutes, an hour to make a decision whether this person is the right person for testing and test automation. So the interview methods, techniques, and what kind of questions we ask, how to get a decision or conclude a decision in a short span of time. Then continuous learning, that is an build an organization which can provide a continuous learning to its people. So the leader should have these skills, and they always come across with a lot of questions and dilemmas how to do all these things. And again, building a test automation team is not an easy job. I would I would recollect a statement from one of my prior managers, Peter Hansen. So once he said, building a test automation team is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And it is very much true. It takes its own time. Even if you hire experienced automation testers from the market or automation consultants from the market, then building them, using them and building a team for a long run, it takes time. It takes a lot of effort, and it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And so if you're planning to build or planning to retain a test automation team, plan for a long term, come up with a long term plan. So it's always a marathon. Technology, tools, and techniques. This is an interesting area. Let me move to the next slide. And so I have listed down a lot of jargons from the industry. These are some of the words we come across probably on a daily basis. Agile, Selenium, CI/CD, ChatGPT, Metaverse, Cypress, mobile, consulting, waterfall, all those things. And often these technology tools and terminologies that confuse people. And many cases, they go with the flow. And then it is always a challenge to the leaders. So for example, these days, most of the companies or development, we talk about DevOps or CI/CD, and then somebody probably talk about waterfall on top of that. And then leaders get really confused. What exactly I need to use? What's the benefit? And we get a lot of papers and advice from the industry that the advantage of all those things. And very rarely we come across with what's the disadvantages. And more than that, get all the details to take a decision which one is suitable for my current problem or my organization or my project or product. So we always come across with lot of terminologies like this, and managers always struggle, or leaders always struggle. What's the right approach? And again, I suggest we need to go back to the first goal, the purpose and objective of test automation. Is what is our purpose? Why do we need test automation? And if you realize you don't need it, don't do that. And once you realize you need test automation, then go and spend some time, rather than just pick up a tool or just pick up a marketing material and try to implement that. Do a detailed research, do a cost benefit analysis, and see what is fit for purpose. Return on investment. This is one of my most favorite topics. The reason is this is very vague. Every time when it comes to test automation or testing, people use return on investment and come up with a lot of complex formulas, a lot of projections. And I haven't seen any cases people project, okay, the return on investment is not good, so we should not do automation. Almost all the cases, we put the data which is suitable to us and come up with a massive return on investment. But what is the key elements of the return on investment? Most of the investment we need to do upfront, we need to do immediately, and that is a challenge for the leaders or leadership. They need to find the resources, they need to find the money to do the immediate investment, and return, it can be a couple of months or years down the line. And the return is probably based on a lot of projected formulas and assumptions. And assumptions can always change. Every time the assumption is wrong, we don't come back and change this return on investment. So when you calculate a return on investment, there are tangible and benefits and intangible benefits. You need to consider them carefully and challenge the formula you use, or challenge the assumptions you use, because very rarely we can calculate return on investment very correctly. So this is one key thing when it comes to test automation or any testing. Do the purpose is more important than a perfect solution. What is fit for purpose is more important than a perfect solution. And again, I would like to associate this with the first one. What is the objective and purpose of our test automation? The reason is, many cases we tend to ignore what is fit for the customers or end users or the organization. And we always look for a perfect solution. We try to automate everything, or try to automate the whole regression package, or we try to automate or try to get a perfect CI/CD method or a DevOps, or we do a test-driven development, and we try to automate everything, rather than thinking what is really fit for purpose. Is it really useful in a long run? Would it be really helpful? And that matters a lot when it comes to decision making, and that is a key factor for many leaders. So if you are on a leadership position, or if you are in a decision making position, you need to consider all those factors before blindly go for test automation. In this book, the Test Automation, a Manager's Guide, what I try to explain, that mainly the two aspects of test automation. First is, why do we do automation, and what is the purpose of test automation? And those areas I mainly covered the leadership dilemma. And as a leader, ask, what is test automation and why do we do? You take your project or a product, or your current project, and ask, what's the purpose? What's the objective? Do we really need? If you have a solid answer, a sound answer for that, then move to the next part of this book. That is, how and when. How do we do the automation? In that case, we analyze the tool, we pick up the right test cases, we see whether we have resources, and how to hire people, all those aspects. And then when, mainly how much time it will take. Can we fit our automation plan with the product development plan or project development plan? Or would it really, because after all, test automation is a project itself. We are developing a software product. So those are the 5 key leadership dilemmas, but there are plenty more leadership issues and questions when it comes to automation. starting from cost, the purpose, the objectives, the time to market, um, the resources, skills, and moreover, what is fit for purpose. So that's what I try to cover in this book. I try to cover in this presentation. So if you are on any level of test automation, ask these questions to your project or your product and see what's the answers you get before you jump into automation or uh, you blindly follow a market trend. If you would like to know more about test automation, you can always contact me. If you would like to buy this book, you can contact me. I can offer you an author's discount, and I regularly update the leadership dilemmas in my LinkedIn and Twitter accounts. So feel to contact me. My email address is here. And thank you for your time. And any question, feel free to ask.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Bob. And yeah, very interesting. But I have a question off the bat before I even jump into what questions the audience may ask. And it's one of the things to do is with building a proper, and we're using the word proper lightly, a proper automation team. What initially you need a starting point. So let's hire the first guy, and then we'll build a team around him. See that first guy? What do you actually look for in that first guy?
I look for mainly those 4 questions whether he can answer. One is the strategic side, the thought process of that person, whether that person can think strategically, long term, rather than very tactical thinking. That the person who got really good experience in managing team, developing test strategies, test plan, implementing them. So that is mainly the managerial leadership skills. And then the second part is the technical skills, because you are mainly hiring the first person to your team. So the person with wider technical knowledge, I won't limit that person for one particular technology or one particular tool. So if you are hiring a person, think about the person should have wider experience in test automation, not just functional testing, good experience in performance, volume, security, usability, all those aspects of test automation, because it is not just or functional testing or a performance testing. So these 2 skills. Then certainly we look for the soft skills like team management skills, and managing people in communication, interaction, those skills. But two major skills is, one is that planning, management, and strategy skills that always associated with the leadership skills. And then the other side, the technical skills, wider technology knowledge. And also the person should be a good motivator, because it is not always easy to build a test automation team. Always come across with challenges. So the person who can anticipate challenges, anticipate problem, motivate a team, build a team, that kind of a person. So as I mentioned earlier, Larry, building a test automation team, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Yeah, it's true. That is true. And my follow-on question to that is and then with something based on tooling. Now you find when you have a automation team, so we put this team together, and then you tend to reach this you tend to deal with management, and then management say no, we can't afford that, or no, we can't this. How do you manage that space where you're building your let's say your framework, you're building out your framework, and how much does the upper management have influence over what you put together as a framework?
Okay, there are two aspects. I think most of the companies or individuals that come across with this problem. One is the test automation tool. There are licensed tools, and there are various kind of license model, and it cost, mainly it's cost involved. And there are open source freewares. Initially, some of them you don't we don't see any cost, but again there are costs involved, because you need a software. Even if it is probably a cloud based or an on premises, you need infrastructure, you need effort. So everything, there is cost involved. There is nothing called free. There is no free meal. So that there are the two aspects you need to consider. Then we always, or most of the cases, we go with industry trends and jargons. Like you go and do a search in Google about test automation tool. It will list so many tools, and then we can see so many reviews. But you need to go back and see what is our requirements, what is the scope of my product or project, or company, what kind of tool I need. Sometimes you don't need any fancy tools. You may need probably a Python script or a shell script which you can use and do the automation. So that kind of decision we need to take. And then automation is not just functional automation, right? There are various levels of automation. It can be an API level, it can be a product scripting level, then it can be functional automation or performance, it can be a pen testing, it can be a build verification, or a lot of non-functional sites you can automate. And some of those things you don't need any tool. Now, I will cover another aspects of automation, Larry. Um, when it comes to massive consulting companies and system integrators, and they implement a lot of tools like Remedy or ServiceNow or Salesforce, and most of these tools, these modern day tools, they come up with their own automation framework, automation testing framework. So you don't need a separate tool. You can use that package solution itself to automate. So so in that case, the one key thing is the skills. As I mentioned, um, there are various technologies, various scripting and programming languages, but most of the cases, people who are good in one programming language, they can pick up another one. And modern day tools like the tools along with the off-the-shelf package, they don't need much um, scripting. Most of the cases, it's a configuration. You need to configure, and you can do the automation. So need to consider all these aspects, because and again, the main thing is what is our objectives, what is the purpose, and think whether do we need a really a tool. If we need a tool, then go and explore, compare a couple of tools and see what is really fit for purpose, fit for our organization, or fit for our team. um, but some cases you don't have, there are exceptional cases because there is already a tool and most of your team members or team, they have knowledge in a different tool. In that case, you need to do a selective decision whether you need to ask the people to train the new tool or change a new tool. So again, my view is the automation is very wide and vast, and in some cases a record and playback will meet your it will provide your solution. You don't need any framework or any coding or anything. In some cases you need to develop a proper framework with libraries, exception handling, and all those things.
Okay. And just one other thing, from a management point of view, is about tool maintenance. From we also from a whole management point of view, you have your whole team together, they're doing automation, they're doing thing, and then they have, like you rightfully say, they have a tool that is do Salesforce, and they have a tool that is used, doing APIs, and they have a tool that is used doing X, Y's, and Z's. But how do you manage the whole maintenance of those tools, and not just the maintenance, but how do you know consolidate the idea that we have 15 tools to do all this, as opposed to 3 or 4 that would do it all.
Okay. There are short term and long term. Usually, what we do a cost benefit analysis, or probably develop a proof of concept and see whether this tool is fit for purpose. And if you know the underlying technologies, most of the tool vendors, they will suggest whether their tools they have, support that a particular technology or platform. That is one easy way. But what we need to really consider, one is I covered this very detail in my book. One is if you're going for a licensed tool, mainly the license model, how exactly the license model work. These days, most of the tools are available um, uh, cloud, so you can use that tool, but they all have different licensing model. Some tools are pay as you go, some tools are based on number of users, some tools when you use it, it wipes out your license, so it is based on usage basis. So many different factors. Now, another important area is tools are like technologies. 10 years back, we used a whole set of technologies, and now we are probably using a whole completely new set of tools and technologies. You pick up any tools, they keep on upgrade or release new versions. So I think some of you probably remember the way back, probably at 20, 25 years, we started with Mercury load runner or Mercury wind runner. And from there, it is changed and changed and changed. And it was not easy. Probably the functionality wise, it all, or test director, it's all changed. Functionality wise, it may be probably look very same, but think about the infrastructure we need. Every time we need to upgrade the tool, we need a new set of infrastructure, most of the cases, and then upgrade the test scripts. So it's again, it's a marathon. So you need to, when you consider a tool for automation, consider these factors. How long we will be using this, how many cycles we will be using. If it is some cases just use it and throw it, then you may probably consider that level of a tool. You don't need a framework. And that's what I mentioned about record and playback. A lot of tools, they provide that, and some cases that is enough, because it is probably to support a user experience user acceptance testing. An end user, they don't know much about technology, so we are just helping them. So we don't need we need a quick solution, probably for a couple of days. So there are different factors, Larry, and there are costs involved in everything. That's what I say. It's a resource-consuming activity. So we need to see if it's people, it is infrastructure, it is a time and effort, and then by the time we develop something or we plan to develop, there's a new version. So we need to think all this aspects before we consider a tool.
Yeah, I mean that is good, and I mean it's things with the whole managing the processes is all about, do we use open source or do we use a paid for, to get what's going on. And I know now, and we talk about now, not back in the day with Load Runner and Wind Runner and all these good guys. I mean, now we have so much open source tools out there that that we can leverage. We can leverage to get a lot done that we don't have to take it. But it's cost, as like you rightfully say, everything have a cost, because even to do a POC with a tool, that's a cost.
Yeah.
Because I have to take my time to do it, and that's time not being spent on on actual work for the say. So yeah, it is like you say, it is a dilemma. But I think with the way technology have been the fast advancement in technology, we have the managers and them have a lot more choice, a lot more choice now than they had back then. Because back then was, like we say, Wind Runner, Load Runner, and a lot of these other ones that you just had, there was that. Now people building things as they go along. So my question here is, where do you see in the paid for tools in relation to the free tools? Where do you see the comparison, like I say, 3 years down the road?
Yeah, the open source free tools, there are plenty, and also the license one. Now, the kind of basic approach I follow, there is nothing free. Even though some of those things, it may look free, but you may need to invest at some places. Even if the tool is free, then it is your effort you need to spend. So the automation is changing a lot these days. One major fact I have seen in or changes I have seen in automation is it's kind of a shift right approach. The one reason is, as I mentioned earlier, companies or organization, very rarely they have time to wait. products they need to launch, or they need to do the testing as soon as possible. Or if you are in a system integrator, so if you're working on a performance-based system, you may need that system before the next performance cycle. So you need to deliver. And people mainly think, how do my automation or testing team can support or uh, that process. So so if you take probably an agile or a test driven approach, what we usually do, we develop the test scripts, unit test scripts, before we develop the code. So first is test, and then we develop code, and then we run the code and see our test case are passed or not. If test case are not passed, then we need to go and check what went wrong. So that's a kind of a shift left approach. So mainly you develop your test first, and then develop the product. Now, when it moves to DevOps and CI/CD, it is the other one, right? We try to release a code probably on a daily basis to a production environment. And once you release your code to a production, means it is production testing. So either it is customers, end users, they are testing your solution. So it's a two, and these days mainly, or probably 3 years down the line, we need tools who can really help us that kind of testing, to pick up issues or make the product more stable. Because I think going forward, 9 out of 10 cases I can see people there, or at least 6 out of 10 cases, we will have requests or demand from leaders, this product should be on production yesterday. That
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
a situation. So we need testing tool to support. There may be cases like massive implementation in public sector, or some or mainly they follow a very systematic gateways process. It can take time because they have their own reasons. But most of the other cases, the request from leadership is, okay, we don't want to waste time for testing, but we don't want any issues on production. So that is one reason the shift right is a predominant a trend in these days, because release your product to the production, or give it to the end users, and let them test. So you need something, a testing process, a test automation process, who can really support to complete the testing and release the solution to production and probably test on production. Not that easy.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. And that's just one of those things that comes up, and and come around with it. But when you talk about the whole, shift right, shift left, and everything, it's all about getting it right. I'm not saying right lightly, because I don't think we'll ever get 100% right. But but then we have the point of where you push something into, let's say, into live, in the production environment. And the thing is, do we really want to rely on the public testing the product, or and doing a lot of testing on the product because it's out live? Wouldn't that have a negative effect on the test, like, let's say, on the QA department? If we leverage it, we start to leverage the whole, okay, you know what, let's go, because we want to run, we're going to put stuff into live on very frequently, twice a day maybe. Are we creating a vacuum somewhere where the QA department is going to get knocked for it when the public start to find so much? And wouldn't that in effect, cause downtime on the actual product?
Yeah, it's the same, Larry. What is the most important thing is what is fit for purpose. So we don't deliver probably to give a payment application to the customer, and ask them to go and test and find the defects. So we need to see what is really fit for purpose in some cases, and defects also. So and then focus our testing there. It's a risk-based testing. Is after all, testing is a risk mitigation approach, right? If we see zero risk, then we don't need to test. So for example, we are releasing a product, and if the failure of that product, even if it fails, there's nothing that's going to happen. So when we calculate the risk of failure, and if you see no, the risk is zero, then we don't need to do any tests, because after all, testing is a risk mitigation approach. And some risk we can accept it. Some risk we can mitigate, some risk it will be catastrophic. So we focus our testing. So and that's the same point I agree. What is fit for purpose, that matters. So we don't we cannot deliver everything, give everything to the end user and ask them to you pick up the issues. But some cases, as I mentioned earlier, if we have an annual performance management tool, and we are kind of middle of the year now, and we need this by end of this year. If we don't release, if we don't have that solution by end of this year, then we need to wait another one more year, because the next annual cycle is next 2024 December. In that case, we need to focus what are our priorities when it comes to this, the features and testing, and focus there. Some areas probably we don't need it, or we can wait for a couple of more months, and then again focus our testing. So for example, our performance management system, it has a compensation management also. We don't want any mistake in compensation management, right? We don't want employees pension or salary calculated wrongly. So we need to focus there. But we can probably afford if some defects or bugs in that application, because we know it is not catastrophic, we can go back and change it. Like for example, if it is mapped to a wrong manager, still we can go and correct it before people start to use that. But mainly when it's salary and compensation details, we don't want to make any mistake. So focus, we do a risk-based test analysis and focus on the area. So what, again, we need to decide what is fit for purpose rather than focusing everything. And because when it comes to IT solutions, not everything is as equal as everything else.
That's true. That's true. So thanks, for hanging on and sharing all that, passing on that knowledge to the viewers. Any final thoughts before we wrap up? Any final thoughts you have for the viewers before we wrap up?
Kind of a final summary from me, Larry, and any questions from the audience, I'm happy to take. It's like your career. When you make a decision in your career, you think various aspects, right? You're leaving a company or joining a company, or you decide to do freelance. You mainly do a SWOT analysis, or you do an analysis and see what is really good for us, what's the risk. You need to do the same for automation, and especially if you're in a position to advise leadership, you need to do a thorough job. Otherwise, we may not get the result what we expect or what we thought. So it is a minefield, but when you use it carefully, you can get really good benefit. In way back when I used to lead a team in a product-based company, we managed to automate even 100% of test cases, and with multiple platforms like Linux, Unix, Windows, and IBM platforms. So multiple platforms, because we and platform complaints and massive returns. That those kind of scenarios. But there were scenarios I still I know we automated something and never used. We automated, delivered the solution, but never used. It's completely gone waste.
Yeah, I know about that. I know a lot about that. It happens. It happens. All right. Like I say, thanks. Thanks for taking the time to share all this. And if any further questions come in, I'm sure you'll be happy to respond to them via email, as the case may be. So we had the other stuff. So I want to say thank you much for taking the time out to share with the audience.
Thank you for having me, Larry. Thank you for your time.